Critical emergency communications when the grid goes down. Making contacts all around the world with your own radio. Talk to an astronaut on the International Space Station. These are just a few of the amazing things you can do with your ham radio license. In this video, we'll cover the 10 most incredible things you can do with your ham radio license coming up. Hi, I'm Jim, N4BFR, the lead instructor at Ham Radio Prep. With your ham radio license, you can talk around your local community and even around the world with your own equipment. No internet or cell phone required. It could save your life in an emergency, but there's so much more to do with ham radio than just emergency communications. Some hams focus on making contacts with foreign countries. Others like testing their skills in ham radio competitions. Some try and talk with an astronaut on the International Space Station. With a ham radio license, all of these are possible. You may have just achieved the goal of getting your first ham radio license, or maybe you're still thinking about getting involved. Either way, this video will be a great introduction into the possibilities with ham radio. We'll start with the basics and get more advanced as we go. When you get your driver's license, you want to get a car, right? So when you get your ham radio license, it's time to get a radio. Most people who get their level 1 technician license start by buying a handheld radio. You can buy an entry-level radio like this Baofeng from Amazon that will get you started for around $50. If you're feeling adventurous, you could go ahead and get a more premium HT from a manufacturer like Yaesu or Icom. And the next easy purchase is an upgraded antenna like this one that'll get you much better performance than the stock antennas. We call those rubber ducks. We've researched all the major options and created a video on the top 5 handheld ham radios if you need some more help deciding. Once you've got your handheld, you can chat with friends and family by programming them all to use the same frequency, essentially like a high-powered, long-range walkie-talkie. We call this type of operation simplex. As long as you and your family members are licensed, everyone can use the same frequency. Now you have an off-grid group chat. You're probably thinking that programming one of these can be a little intimidating, but it's a lot easier than you think. We'll include a link on how to program your radio and make your first contact. Most handhelds will allow you to listen into the National Weather Service broadcasts. This lets you keep an ear out on the weather. More advanced versions come with built-in GPS receivers. Remember, anyone who uses a ham radio has to get a ham radio license and call sign. It's like a driver's license for the radio waves, to make sure you operate responsibly and don't interfere with other operators. If you haven't achieved your ham radio license yet, head on over to www.hamradioprep.com or download our mobile app. You can be licensed and on the air in a week or less. A handheld is generally limited to line-of-sight communications, probably a couple of miles. Let's take it up a notch by using repeaters. After you've made your first contact using simplex, the next step is to use a local repeater. Repeaters are ham radio towers that retransmit your signal and can extend your range 30, 50, even 100 miles. Many repeaters can operate off-grid. Hams set them up with solar power, generators, and batteries so they work during an emergency. A great example was during Hurricane Helene. There's a repeater on top of Mount Mitchell. That's 6,000 feet up. From that height, it was able to reach people across western North Carolina. Dedicated ham operators like Dan Kittro, K2DMG, and others helped out. They used ham radio to help locate missing people, organize supply drops over helicopter, and report on road conditions. You can use online tools to find a repeater in your area, and there's probably more than one. Many repeaters keep it basic, using the same transmission mode as your car radio. That is the analog FM mode, which is a great place to start. You'll find other repeaters that use digital modes. Those are great to grow into because they're a bit more complex. To access the repeater, you'll need to program your radio with the frequency, offset, and CTCSS code. CTCSS is the key that unlocks the repeater. When that's all configured, it's as easy as pushing the transmit button. You'll say something like your call sign and monitoring. People listening know that when they hear that, someone new is ready to talk. Repeaters also have regularly scheduled talk groups. We call them nets. You can join in a net to practice your skills or just to chat. When you're ready to start with repeaters, check out our step-by-step repeater guide to program your radio and start making repeater contacts. So, handhelds can go 5 miles or so on their own on a good day. Add in repeaters, and you've extended your range to 30 to 50 miles, maybe even more. But let's say you want to talk across the US or even the world with your own radio and equipment. No internet, no cell phone, not even using a repeater. Just direct radio-to-radio worldwide communications. Ham radio has you covered with what is called HF. With your handheld, you're primarily using frequencies in what's called the VHF and UHF bands. Those are not too far off from what your FM car radio uses or your local police and fire departments. If we use a lower set of frequencies called the HF bands, we can bounce signals off the atmosphere. That gives us around-the-world communications. And let me tell you, there's no rush like having someone from Africa or Australia answer your call on the radio. But in order to effectively use HF, you're going to need to upgrade your ham radio license and equipment. With each level of ham radio license you achieve, you get more frequency ranges and power capabilities, among other privileges. Your entry-level technician license is mostly focused on that line of sight operating with some really limited HF options. The Level 2 general license is the sweet spot to get access to parts of all the HF frequency bands for worldwide communication. By the way, a band in ham radio just refers to a range of frequencies. For instance, the popular 20-meter HF band just refers to the frequency range between 14 and 14.350 MHz. You can get a band plan as a reference to make sure you operate on the frequencies permitted by your license. In addition to your upgraded license, you're also going to need an HF radio and antenna. Your handheld or the mobile radio in your car won't work on HF. It's going to require a bigger equipment investment to get an HF radio and antenna. You can expect to spend anywhere from $500 to $1,500 for your first HF radio. A lot of that will depend on the brand you choose and the features you want. On the lower end, you might choose something by Zygoot. A middle-of-the-road starter radio is the ICOM 7300 for around $1,100 new. Top-of-the-line radios have prices at $5,000 and up. We recommend trying to get that middle-of-the-road option. That's a radio like the ICOM 7300 or Yaesu FT991. You'll be more comfortable getting started with features like 100 watts power output. If you need some help deciding, we've researched all the top HF radio options and come up with the top 5 HF ham radios for beginners. You'll also need an antenna to go with that radio. Many hams like to build their own. A simple dipole antenna can cost less than $50. If you want to buy instead of build, for around $130, an end-fed half-wave antenna is a good choice. It's simple and portable. We have guides for both of those. You may start here with antennas, but it's not likely going to be where you end. You may decide to go crazy and upgrade to a directional antenna that rotates on top of a tower. It's a whole different topic. If you want to speed up the learning process of getting on HF and making contacts all around the world, check out the HF Masterclass from Ham Radio Prep. We'll cover everything from equipment setup to exactly what to say on the air. If you don't already have a logbook at this point, it's a good idea to start tracking your contacts over ham radio by creating one. A logbook is exactly what it sounds like. It's a log of contacts, people you've spoken with over ham radio. In ham radio terminology, each contact is called a QSO. A logbook is great for keeping track of other operators you've contacted, mapping your contacts, and checking the distance or even tracking your progress towards awards. Sign up for a free logbook at worldradioleague.com to get started. Many people get involved in ham radio to support their local community. This usually means getting involved with emergency communications groups. Those groups use public service events as training. Getting deployed to support a marathon works as a simulation. It helps show a deployment for unplanned events like emergencies. Your town, county, or region will usually have one or more of these groups. Look for ARES, the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, RACES, the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, and AUXCOM. There are specialty groups too. The National Weather Service's Skywarn program is one. The Community Emergency Response Teams, or CERT, is another. We've got a link to an emergency communications guide with more information on groups you can get involved with. Before you take care of your community, you need to take care of your family. How would you handle communications with your family during an emergency? That involves creating a personal emergency communications plan in case communications fail. We can help you learn all of this. The Ham Radio Prep Emergency Communications 101 course starts with public service communications. It goes on to help you create a personal EMCOM plan for you and your family. There's much more along the way. Find the link to the course in the description. What about adding ham radio to your road trips? Or making road trips just to do portable ham radio operating sessions? What about operating from parks and mountaintops? We call that portable operating. Hams have created a few groups that help facilitate portable operating. Let's talk about a few really quickly. Parks on the Air. Just what it sounds like. Set up in a state or federal park and make some radio contacts. This is a big ham community these days. Find them at poda.app. Summits on the Air. What if instead of a park, you hike to a mountaintop with minimal gear just to see how many contacts you can make? Find out more about that at soda.org.uk. Islands on the Air. Activate an island, get a credit. DXpeditions. A group of hams get together and spend a few days at a rare ham radio location. It might be a remote island or just someplace with a few hams. They are really fun to try and hunt on the air. If you're active in one of these groups, you'll definitely want to keep track of your contacts in a logbook. The World Radio League logger goes with you. Download and use our phone app, log your contacts, and submit your logs for award credits. And we'll get to awards here in a second. That logger will just be part of your portable operating kit. You'll need to pack a radio, antenna, battery, and coax cable at a minimum. Then, when you get to the park, summit, or island, you start making contacts. If you achieve at least 10 contacts, you officially activate the park or summit. In addition to having a good time, POTA and SOTA are a great way to test your equipment. Your portable activity will also be growing your ham radio skills as well. It's often said that POTA operators are some of the best emergency communications operators too. If you want to get involved with Parks on the Air, aka POTA, check out our guide to learn more. So while POTA and SOTA are fun reasons to operate, there's a whole group out there called Radio Sport. It's one of the fun things to try and do once you're comfortable with basic operating. It's all about getting involved with ham radio contests and events. With ham radio contesting, you can win awards and challenge yourself to become a top ham radio operator. While there are lots of different kinds of contests out there in ham radio land, the basics are the same. You're usually trying to make as many contacts as you can in a short period of time. So these are usually really short exchanges. I give my call sign, you give yours, we exchange something unique like a serial number, and we move on. Here's an example. Once a year, most states have a QSO party weekend. Now remember, QSO is just a ham term for a contact. The basic award would be for most contacts with the state over the contest window. But you can win advanced awards too. These are things like most counties reached, or most Morse code contacts. You get the idea? Field Day, summer and winter, are 2 times a year when local clubs get together. Members participate and see how many contacts they can make. It's a low-stress way to get started in contesting. Just participating is a lot of fun. Becoming a top ham radio contester involves a mix of operating skill and equipment knowledge. You do not have to be an expert to get started. Just hop in and make some contacts. What kind of other contests are there? One weekend, you might try a DX contest. That's how many countries can you reach in 48 hours. The next weekend, it might be a contest using a specific mode of operating, or only on the 10 meters band. Check the contest page in the World Radio League for upcoming contests. You can also win awards without participating in formal contests. Just keep that logbook up to date. And if you can confirm at least one contact in all 50 US states, you qualify for an award. Another popular operating award is earned when you get 100 different country contacts in the logbook. Contacting different countries is often called DXing. DX means distant in ham speak. A list of ham radio countries and entities is called DX entities. Remember those DXpeditions we mentioned earlier? This is where that name comes from. For serious contesting, you'll also see ham radio operators make serious equipment investments. Check out these ham radio towers from the WP3C station in Puerto Rico. Tracking progress towards awards is another good reason why you want to keep an up-to-date ham radio logbook. Monitor those contacts you've made to ensure you're getting credit. You're not home all the time, so consider installing a ham radio in your car or truck. If you love talking on local repeaters, having a radio in your vehicle is really enjoyable. When you're shopping for that perfect unit to fit in your ride, look for mobile VHF and UHF radios. They use similar frequencies to handheld radios, but since they run from the car, they can deliver a bit more output power. You'll learn more about that as you get licensed. You can go crazy like this guy, or install a simple radio and antenna for on-the-go operations. It's perfect for off-roading. That's because it provides longer range off-grid communications than CB or GMRS. Ham radio is not limited to communications on the ground, and it hasn't been since 1960. That's when a group now called AMSAT launched the first ham radio satellite. Hams make and deploy low Earth orbit satellites that have little repeaters in them. Then they make contacts up to hundreds of miles using those repeaters. Much of it is done with specialty antennas on their handhelds. There are probably a few hams in space right now. They might be going over your head on the International Space Station. Those hams use the radio for fun in their spare time. One even participated in Field Day from the ISS not long ago. A group called ARIS, Amateur Radio on the International Space Station, works to provide and maintain 2 ham radios on the ISS. The ham-licensed astronauts make scheduled contacts with schools and STEM education groups. Visit aris.org to find out how schools get involved. And by the way, those ham radios on the ISS are not just there for fun in school. They are an official communications backup system for the ISS in case of emergency. While you're operating out in space, why not try bouncing your signal off the moon? That's called EME, or Earth-Moon-Earth contact. If a big target's not enough of a challenge, some hams bounce signals off asteroids and meteors. What a great kind of contact to have in the log. Most of what we've talked about doing has been using voice communications, actually talking with another ham. Ham radio operating isn't just voice communications. We're always experimenting with digital and other modes of communication. When ham radio started 100 years ago, it was actually only using Morse code. Voice was just another experiment then. Well, you don't need to know Morse to be a ham anymore. There's still a vibrant community keeping it alive. Morse operators are using it for emergencies and contests. Some use it to challenge themselves with ultra-low power operations. As computers evolved, so did digital modes. These are ways of sending ones and zeros instead of voice signals. Using digital can help get information farther more efficiently. Today, one of the most popular digital modes is called FT8. These are short 15-second transmissions. They use a software called WSJTX. And here's the really cool thing about WSJTX. It's a protocol designed by Joe Taylor, K1JT. Big deal, right? A ham did ham things. But this ham is an astrophysicist and Nobel laureate in physics. FT8 is easy to use and allows you to make worldwide contacts. It works well with weak signals. That means you don't need perfect propagation or high power to make long-distance contacts. What about getting even more detailed information out? In Hurricane Maria, hospitals in Puerto Rico needed help sending equipment requests back to San Juan. They used a digital mode called WinLink. That allows for email-like messages over the radio. Hams do digital voice as well. Remember we mentioned digital repeaters earlier? Those repeaters use digital voice modes called things like D-Star, DMR, and Fusion. One of their big benefits is more efficient bandwidth use. So more traffic with less equipment. One more digital mode you'll find on VHF is called APRS. The Automated Packet Reporting System lets you send GPS location information or text messages over ham radio. Think about being able to track your family on a hike with just their ham radios while off the grid. So we mentioned that ham radio voice operations grew from experimentation. Digital operations were experiments too. This helps to show that experimentation is at the heart of ham radio. Ham radio operators are by nature curious innovators. So it's no wonder that some of the world's most impactful innovators and scientists have been licensed hams. From Steve Wozniak, WV6VLY, co-founder of Apple Computers, to rockstar Joe Walsh, WB6ACU of the Eagles. Or how about NASA astronaut Owen Garriott, W5LFL? He worked with his ham buddies and NASA to get the first amateur radio experiment on the space shuttle. 40 years ago, that was a heck of an experiment. A ham radio license includes the privileges to experiment. That includes things like building your own antennas to test propagation. Want to build a radio in a mint tin? You can do that. Want to be like Joe Taylor and design a digital mode? Why not? There are plenty of DIY projects online to check out and see what catches your interest. You can build your own circuits or program an Arduino to receive ham radio signals, or maybe set up your own mesh network. You can receive images via slow scan TV, or launch a weather balloon with built-in ham radio telemetry, or join in with citizen scientists. They study things like how an eclipse impacts the way signals travel through the atmosphere. If you can dream it, you can probably try it. Ham radio has a little something for everyone. You can focus on one thing, like emergency communications. Or you can try some of everything, like contesting, satellite operating, or DIYing your next radio. Before you get overwhelmed choosing an option, you gotta get a license. Go to hamradioprep.com to get everything you need to study for your ham radio license. It's a great time to get started. At Ham Radio Prep, we teach you everything you need to know to get your ham radio license and start operating. You'll find easy to understand step-by-step guides. Study where you want to as well. Use the website or take our courses on the go with a mobile app or a book. As you start to operate, don't forget to create your free account with the World Radio League website. You can track your progress and contacts with your logbook. Plus, connect with other operators near you. Who knows where that'll take you? I'm Jim N4BFR from the Ham Radio Prep Team 73, and we hope to hear you on the air soon.
We've helped over 60,000 students get their US FCC amateur radio license, and we can help you too, no matter your age or educational background. Go to www.hamradioprep.com and try a free lesson today.